Hola mi gente, welcome back to my channel. I am XO Joe. Today we're gonna look at what is probably the most unexpected read I've had to date that I seriously enjoy so much that I am 9 books in. Before we get started, make sure you hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed yet, like, comment, do all of the good stuff that really helps out this channel. Of course, we have to have a drink while I talk about this epic series and tell you just how I got convinced to reading this because it's a pretty sweet but unexpected story. And today we're gonna have Dutch Bros. Okay, didn't expect it to just go off flying like that. It didn't occur to me until watching the video that this is a pretty ungodly color. And yet, at least this time I'm not watching a scary video and pairing it with an energy drink that's just gonna make my nerves go. I absolutely love this series. I think it's incredible. It has so many twists. This author is like the queen of freaking cliffhangers and she knows it. Shannon, you know it. The book is called Keeper of the Lost Cities, and it's actually a middle grade book. The reason I say it's a middle grade book is because I know I mostly talk about YA fantasy on this channel, and maybe you haven't seen this series on your feed or on your radar if you're also primarily a YA reader. I just want to let you know you're like not missing out on some YA part of the world. This belongs in middle grade and it's absolutely incredible. I mentioned in a previous video that I worked in education. In my last job, I actually worked at a middle school and I loved working with the students there. I had the awesome opportunity of collaborating with our school librarian and launched a book club for our middle schoolers. The first year we did this, we really let our middle schoolers pick a book that we would read all together. And I have to be honest, when I saw the options, I was more interested in this other story that is an immigration telling. I thought it would be a great opportunity to really look at someone else's story and dive in with our students. Apparently they had already read that one the previous year, so instead they chose a fantasy novel called Keeper of the Lost Cities. When I first saw the title, I was like, you know what? I do like fantasy. Let me look into this. And then I read the synopsis and I said, you know, I don't know. What if this is more predictable than YA? YA already has certain patterns, even though I enjoy them. Some books have more predictable patterns than other books. So I was a little nervous and I admit prejudice toward a middle grade book. I thought middle grade fantasy would be even more predictable, maybe slow paced or weird. When I was in middle school, I didn't read middle grade books. I skipped straight to YA and I was so wrong. My 12-year-old students definitely have way better taste than I do because this series is an absolutely epic story. In this series, there are a total of 9 books. Really, it's 10, but one of them is called 8.5 because you read from different characters' perspective. So technically, this one is book number 9 and the most recently released. Keeper of the Lost City stars Sophie Foster, who is basically an elf in our human world. She doesn't realize she's an elf and adopted by this family until she encounters the mysterious and kind of cute Fitz, who tells her that she's actually an elf and belongs in their world. In her human world, she didn't feel like she belonged for a very long time. She was very smart. She had a photographic memory. She could learn every single language super fast. And the worst part is she could read other people's minds. So Sophie was an outcast. When we begin the book, we actually see that she's already in her high school years when she's only 13. She's always felt out of place. It's kind of easy for her to accept that she does belong to a different world. It's very hard for her to swallow that she's an elf. In the human world, the only elves she knows belong on cookie logos or The Hobbit, things like that. So she is freaking out, like, I thought elves were small or had pointy ears. The reason Fitz comes and takes her away is because she's actually in danger. There are these weird fires in San Diego, California where she lives, but they're actually part of a bigger play. Before really meeting Fitz, she has weird encounters with people that kind of want to take her away. So Fitz comes in because his father is pretty high up and works for the council, even though he's not a counselor himself. He's been looking for Sophie because there are secret documents that mention this person who can retain information and secrets that no one can penetrate because their abilities are so advanced, no one can get into their mind. So she's this amazing spy weapon thing. Fitz's dad Alden doesn't fully understand. They just know they need to find this girl before other enemies find them. Now, it's weird to think of the elf world having enemies. This elven world seems perfect and beautiful. People live for so long. They live at peace with each other. They are so smart. Everyone has the same amount of wealth. Everyone has these supernatural abilities because its citizens, its counselors really play out the part that they're fine, that the elf city is absolutely safe and perfect and well. Alden is kind of the odd one out because he does believe there is something wrong. She's faced with a really tough decision. She's not safe, and if she's not safe, her human family isn't safe. And the council really asks her to stay in the city, stay with them so they can figure out what's going on so she can actually be raised as an elf. The Lost Cities also has very advanced technology, very advanced medicine. Sophie, you kind of see throughout the book that Sophie is sometimes a little bitter. Like, why won't they share this technology and medical advancement with the human world? Later on, she does find out that the elves tried to collaborate with humans, but per usual, we want to weaponize everything. So the elves had to distance themselves from humans and sort of started looking down on humans because they just found them self-destructive, unwise, violent, wrecking the world, all of the changes in the climate, all of these wars, all of the money and greed. And honestly, as a reader, you can't fully blame them, and Sophie doesn't either, but still, she lived with human people. Her parents are human, even if they're not her real parents. She still loves them. No one really knows who Sophie's real parents are, and they won't come forward. So that remains a mystery throughout the first book, definitely. There are elves that have abilities, but Sophie's abilities are a lot stronger. So our poor Sophie already felt like an outcast in the human world. Now she's basically an outcast in the elf world too. She does have the power to read other people's minds, but she could actually penetrate minds that she shouldn't be able to penetrate. And that's basically book one. We are world building, we are figuring out who her new friends are, what this new academy is that she goes to, and learn how to really use her abilities and learn all this history that she's missed out. I mean, she's behind so many years. So like I mentioned, Shannon is incredible at cliffhangers. I mean, there's just so much in the story that we don't know. Even up to book 9, there's so much we don't know, and she's great at leaving us like frustrated, you know? I even remember reading in the beginning of her book, you know, the little author excerpt, and she says like, yes, there's a cliffhanger at the end of this book waiting for you. And she put this little smiley face, this little tiny smiley face, like taunting us. This was supposed to be the last book, the last installment, but Shannon was signed on to yet another one. So number 10 will be the official last one. But it's a really cute story. You see Sophie coming into her own, being faced with decisions that she's just too young to face. The adults around her even voice that as they find out more and more what Sophie was created for, what she was meant for, why she was left in the human world instead of growing up in the Lost Cities. There's so many twists and turns because there's so much mystery here, but there's always some type of action. There's also humor. Some of my favorite characters in this book just have so much depth to them that I didn't expect. I have to say one of my favorite characters, his name is Keith. He is Fitz's best friend and soon becomes Sophie's best friend too. And he is absolutely funny, adorable. His story is so sad as well because this book really tackles with a lot of themes. It tackles family, belonging, friendship, growth, crushes, like all of these really sweet things that I think anyone could relate to. And I just found it like a really endearing story reading our little Sophie Foster figure out her feelings as well. It's a coming of age story for sure, but there's more at play than just a crush. Although you can't forget Sophie is 12, 13, 14 throughout these books, and so she has a lot of questions in her mind about relationships and friendships and who she is. I came out like loving it. I binged the rest. My students were like, Miss Joanna, like, where are you in the book? Can we talk about it now? You could tell they were so excited about all the twists and turns and cliffhangers, and they were so excited to talk about it with me that they just wanted me to hurry up and finish. So this past year I finally finished 8.5. So I am all caught up, and I did go up to my students and tell them I'm caught up, like here are my theories, and we all broke down our different theories of like, who is this secret society? Who is that secret society? Who do you think has this power? Who do you think are so Sophie's parents? Like all of these questions that we had. Now, I was really excited to also make this video because I ended up going to Shannon Messenger's event for book number 9. Let me just tell you, okay? Let me just tell you how crazy it was to get these tickets. When I spoke to my good friend and our school librarian about Shannon Messenger, she told me that her events sell out really fast. They've had to move from their small bookshop to a whole auditorium at middle schools because they would get so much demand to see Shannon. They wanted to bring in and squeeze in as many kids and families as possible, so they ended up moving to the school. Shannon finally announced that she was coming to my city, but by the time I saw it, which was only like 2 or 3 days after, it was sold out, like 100% sold out. Also held at a school. Everything was gone and I was so bummed. I was like, come on, like I have questions about these characters and I just want to see what else an author has to say about their book that isn't in the book. So I did call this bookstore like, hey, is there any chance you guys will have more tickets, or is there any way I can get one if someone cancels? And they said, you know what, check this site, they're our official supplier. You're just gonna have to refresh and see if anyone returns their ticket. You guys, I did. For like 3 weeks straight, every day, at least twice a day, I would go in, refresh, and see if there was any ticket available. The day before her event, I happened to refresh one more time and 3 tickets popped up for the solo admission ticket and I snatched it up. I didn't even finish reading all the instructions and all the rules. I was like, I need to get this right now or it's gonna sell out. I was so excited because the ticket actually came with the special edition of her book already signed because she wasn't gonna do signing in person. Again, huge event that she wasn't even gonna have a line to get signatures or anything like that. By the end of the day, they were all gone. I did think it was kind of funny that I'm an adult going to this event, but even my good friend told me that she has seen adults like walking around with a keeper book. These adults are like, yeah, my kids started reading it, so I did too, but it's just so good I couldn't put it down. And I'm talking about like 40-something-year-olds also reading this book. I should never underestimate like what level, what grade, especially being a YA reader. I shouldn't have thought that just because it's middle grade, it isn't gonna be that challenging or interesting or something like that. That's totally on me. I've just never tried a middle grade book, honestly. Like none of the synopsis ever really interested me when I was young, and I stuck to YA. So I'm really glad I tried this book because it's incredible. I highly recommend it. If you don't realize by now, I highly recommend you try this book. By the end of it, I guarantee you're gonna wanna know what goes on with Sophie and how her story ends. So onto the event. I tried vlogging it a little bit, so I'll show you some clips as I go on and talk about it. It was in a really cute neighborhood. It was a really cold night, but I was so excited that I felt like I was perfectly fine. I got there super early. I think doors opened at 5:30 and I was there by 4:30, and by 4:30 there were already people in line. It was so cute seeing so many students dress up, and it actually reminded me of the Harry Potter era, which this book gets compared to a lot. I so can't wait to dive into this one. You can see it's a huge book. Like all of them are really thick. There's a lot in here that happens. Still, by the end of it, you feel like you didn't figure out anything anyway because there's so many more questions. I don't work at a middle school anymore, and sometimes I do miss working with my students and asking them questions and seeing them get super excited and passionate about, you know, these newfound hobbies. And it was really sweet that I was able to talk to some students and ask them like, who do you like more? Do you like Keith? Do you like Fitz? What do you think of Sophie? What's your favorite storyline so far? Like all these different books. So of course, all these kids were super excited. I will critique one thing I didn't like about this event. We were waiting in line for a while. Like I said, some people were there already way before me, and I was there by 4:30. Doors open at 5:30, event starts at 6. When we entered in, I understand that this venue is fully booked and everything, so they have to make sure people are filling the seats out correctly. I just thought it was a little bit mean forcing people to sit in certain parts of the auditorium when they were there so early and, you know, freezing outside. It wasn't done in the nicest way, like the tone and everything. I understand event planning takes a lot. It was just a bit of a bummer because these are kids and families that are waiting to get in and waited so long or traveled really far. So that was a bit of a bummer. But the rest of the event was really cool. Shannon sat down, spoke with another author. One of my top questions was actually answered. Are Sophie's choices and her, you know, her final stance, are they all planned out already, like predestined? Because I know some authors talk about how they want their characters to kind of march and where they want them to land. And some authors have said it's really hard to get my character to do something because sometimes they don't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. When I read this series, it almost felt like she was reacting in that moment. I don't always feel like it's reactive. I just feel like it's predestined. And with her book, I always felt like Sophie's reactions were authentic in a way. And I was surprised that Shannon said she does not plan Sophie's emotional reaction. She says that it doesn't feel organic to her when she's reading, and she can tell that everything is predetermined. That she does plan all the unfortunate things that happen to Sophie ahead of time, and all of that has stayed the same. But Sophie's reaction to those things happen organically for her. They happen as she's writing this story out. That blew my mind because I was like, that's exactly how I read this story. It was so sweet meeting her. I was just like trying to kind of get in and out because I knew there was a really long line and I didn't want to be scolded for like maybe taking too much of her time. I absolutely adore her books. I'm so glad I got into them. Again, I think this is my most unexpected read up to date. If you've seen that series, I made a couple of videos on books I didn't expect to like that I really ended up liking, and this is one of them. I know 9 books feels like a lot, but trust me, it doesn't feel like a lot. They may be super chubby and a little intimidating looking, but it's so packed with information and twists and turns and feelings and grief and joy that I don't think you're gonna really feel how long this book is, because you're just gonna enjoy it so much. I hope that you read it. I hope that you enjoy it. Let me know in the comments below if I've made you curious about this series at all. I know I'm just adding to your TBR list, but I'm not sorry. It's an incredible series, and if I have to suffer with her cliffhangers, you have to suffer with me. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. Keep reading.